They're like, so, sir, doctor's ready to see him, but one last thing. It's a $15 copay for your son to get seen today. Now, I was literally in the negative when I showed up there. And I told the receptionist, like, look, is there any way you can bill me afterwards? Like, can we just get him seen now, you bill me later? She's like, sir, I'm sorry, like, company policy, you got to pay that $15 first. And at this point, I'm like desperate. I'm like, and I just reasoned with her, like, look, I literally have no money to my name. And I'm really worried for my son. Can you do anything to help me? And Rich, like, I'll never forget the way she looked at me. It was like this mix of like uneasiness and sadness. And she's like, sir, I'm so incredibly sorry, but the only way your son is going to be seen today is if you pay that $15. All right, we're talking about $15, 60 quarters.
Yeah.
I didn't have 60 quarters to my name.
What did you do? So I know you're in some masterminds. I believe you're in Brandon Turner's content mastermind, right? I'm a big fan of masterminds. I'm in some myself. I actually just joined Ryan Pineda's content mastermind, which has been pretty cool. What's your experience with masterminds so far?
I think there's been a lot of hate on people that run a lot of these somewhat more expensive coaching programs, right? But it's unfair because there are a lot of value you can get if you pay someone who's already achieved what you want to achieve, if you pay them to give you the roadmap, right? Like Tony Robbins, the super successful motivational dude, like he always talks about the fastest way to success is to model someone who's already successful.
It is.
And for me, if I can shortcut and avoid all of the mistakes that a typical person is going to make, and it's only going to cost me money, I'm willing to do that, right? Now, I do think that there is you get some people that are just like junkies for this stuff, right? They're going to join everybody's program. They're going to go to every event. They're going to do all these things and then take zero action. And I've met those people. And that is not a good investment of your time or your money. But if you enter into these things and you're spending $5, $6, $10, $20, $25, $100,000 to join these things, there's two benefits you get. A is, like I said, you get to model that person's behavior. The other thing is that you get to now elevate your own network because you're around people who are also willing to spend $20, $25, $50,000 to be in that room. And I think that's also where a lot of that benefit comes is you meet people who are more successful than you in a lot of these situations, and it's hard to put a price on.
Yeah, you're so right about that. Like I tell people all the time, I'm like, man, becoming successful or figuring out something new, it's not a secret recipe. Just go find someone that's done what you want to do, whether it's real estate, whether it's business, starting a gym, whatever it is. Go find someone that's done it successfully and then go provide value to them and learn from them. You don't need to like reinvent the wheel,
And that's the thing about real estate investing is that it is such a tried and true model for building wealth.
It is.
There are a lot of nuances, I think, to get it right. But overall, it's a pretty straightforward process. So if you can find someone that's already been successful and just do what they are telling you to do, like if someone came to you and said, Rich, I want to learn how to buy a boutique hotel. You've done it a few times now. You'll probably tell them, hey, here are the mistakes that I made. Don't do this thing. Here are the things that went really well. You should definitely do these things. And here's what I'm planning to do the next time so I can be even better.
Yeah.
And how much value would they get from being able to hear that firsthand from someone that just did it? Blows my mind.
It's crazy. Yeah. And you're so right. I mean, the mentors that I have out in North Carolina, I mean, same thing. Like they have been doing this for decades. They've made all the mistakes. They've had all the wins. Their perspective has changed so many times. So I can go to them and learn what they took 20 something years to learn. And I can learn that in a condensed time frame, and it just gets you from point A to point B that much quicker. And I think that is the key to leveling up and becoming successful.
Absolutely, And you hear a lot of people that say, oh, this person makes more money from their coaching program than they do from their real estate business, or why would you want to do this coaching thing if you can make more money doing real estate? And the truth is, some people prefer to teach and do that than actually run the business, because running a real estate business at scale, it's a lot of work and it's hard. Not everyone wants to do that. And some people maybe get more fulfillment from teaching other people how to do that. And for me, dude, like, I'm a young black guy and I love being able to give back and see other people who come from varied backgrounds that aren't, and no offense to this group of people, but that aren't middle-aged white dudes, because that was the majority of what real estate investing was for a long time, right? So if I can inspire another group of people who maybe didn't have that exposure in their own household, like, dude, that means more to me than getting another short-term rental.
I'm glad you brought that up. Do you feel like being black in a space, especially with real estate investing, I mean, when I go to these apartment conferences, multifamily conferences, I mean, let's just be honest, it's a bunch of old white dudes wearing suits, and they all kind of look the same. A lot of them are just out of shape, overweight. And so I don't know, like for me, I'm like, at first, when I first got in real estate, I was like, okay, like I gotta clean up the appearance, you
Right.
know, I gotta wear a collared shirt and this and that. But now I'm like, dude, I just rock I got tattoos,
Right.
I wear earrings, I got a
Yeah.
ball cap. I'm like, I don't care. It's just me, right? It's very authentic. And I think now I kind of use it to my advantage, and people still give me money to buy deals, and like people trust me with their money. So, um, do you think being black and not the prototypical real estate investor that's white, old, and wearing a suit, do you think that you use it to your advantage?
I think that here's how I answer the question. I think that a lot of people take their current circumstances and use it as a reason to not do well. Right? Like I can't succeed because of this thing, or I can't succeed because of that thing. And I'm a black guy in America. I became a dad when I was 16. Came from a pretty much a single parent household. Like if you look at those statistics, it's pretty grim for most people. And some people might say, well, I'm not successful because of these things. And for me, it's always been, I have to be successful so that way the next person who's in these same set of situations knows that there is a different path, right?
Love that.
So, dude, like for me, it was never even about it being an obstacle. Like there's obviously certain things that come along with it, but I've always used it as motivation to be successful.
Yeah, that's powerful, man. I think there's a lot of people out there that, like you said, like they will use certain things as an excuse. But that's inspiring that you're doing that, man.
Thank you, brother.
Yeah. So what are you guys working on today? Like, what are you guys focused on for 2023? I know you guys have big plans. You got big visions. What are you guys focused on this year?
Yeah, I mean, long term for us, Rich, we want to get to $1 billion in assets under management. That's our goal. I'm giving myself, it was 10 years, now it's 9 years because we're in January. So I got 9 years to make that happen. So really, it's trying to build the infrastructure that we need now to reach those really aggressive goals. And it's probably going to hockey stick, right? Where the first couple of years are going to be a little bit slower, and then we'll reach this kind of point where the velocity starts to take off. So right now, it's getting proof of concept on the commercial side. Like I said, we're trying to get that first commercial deal under contract this year. Once we build that out, then it's like, okay, how can we start to rinse and repeat that same process? So that's going to be a big focus for us. We want to launch our co-hosting business in the short-term rental space. I feel that there's a big gap there. You have some of these big national companies that are hit or miss. I've stated some of those properties before, and not all of them are great. Some are fantastic, but we feel that there's still a gap in that marketplace we can help fill. So building out the co-hosting piece is big for us, and then building out our commercial side. And then we also have our coaching program. We really want to focus on growing that as well, and helping more people kind of find success in the short-term rental space.
What are you guys going after on the commercial side? Like what kind of assets?
Yeah, ideally, a lot of what you guys are looking at, right? The kind of boutique hotel space and some of the old motels. We had a beautiful property under contract in California this last summer that was 23 separate cabins.
I remember that.
Yeah, all in one parcel.
Big Bear.
Yeah, and Big Bear, a big popular destination here in California. That deal ended up not working out, but I would love to get something that has separate structures. That way it still really does feel like an Airbnb, but as the owner, you get the benefit of it being a commercial property and not a single family residential. So we're open, man. Ideally, we're just looking for strong vacation rental markets. And then things that we can go in, renovate, and kind of pull our equity out on the back end.
Yeah, I love that. So when that deal fell through, did you guys put a pause on searching for commercial stuff for a little bit, or did you guys get right back to the drawing board?
Yeah, we kind of did, and I don't know if it was just like that one hurt a lot because we put a lot of time, almost 6 figures into that deal that we sunk into it. So a lot of time, money, energy, and afterwards it was you kind of licking your wounds a little bit, like, okay, what are the things that went right that we can apply to the next one? What were the lessons that we learned that we need to adjust for the next time?
What were the biggest takeaways with that?
Yeah, dude. So many, right? First is that I think we swung too big with our first deal, right? Like I think for that deal to make sense, we had to raise like 5.6 million is what we needed to raise.
That's a big chunk. And
that's a big chunk.
What was that for? Like down payment?
All the fees up front, for our rehab budget reserves.
Was it going to be a pretty big renovation?
We were going to renovate pretty much every unit top to bottom.
Okay.
Right? They hadn't been touched since like 1999. So there was a lot of room for upside, but it was also going to cost quite a bit to make that happen. So I think the amount that we needed to raise as first time syndicators was difficult. Also the timing, right? We were trying to raise in the summer of 2022, which was one of the most difficult times to raise money. I have a friend who can raise $30 million in 24 hours. It took him like 6 months in 2022 to raise that same amount just because where the market was. So I think the timing of it was a big lesson for us as well. The second thing is that how we structured the deal. So a lot of people that follow me, because I'm the host of the Bigger Pockets Real Estate Rookie podcast, a lot of those folks maybe have capital, but they don't have accredited investor status. So we had a lot of people that were coming to us saying, hey, I want to give you my money, but I can't check that box. And we learned later that there is a way where you can accept non-accredited investors first, kind of do some paperwork on the back end, and then open it up so you can solicit publicly. So some deal structure things we learned as well. But I say those are the biggest ones, like knowing what our capability was in the raise end, then how we structured that deal in terms of accredited versus non-accredited.
Yeah, and the last one you alluded to, like, is a big one, like the 506B, 506C. Can you solicit? Can you take non-accredited investors or accredited investors? And for the listeners out there, just to kind of break it down simply, basically the SEC, the Security Exchange Commission, they have a couple different guidelines if you're going to syndicate and offer equity to buy real estate. But you have the 506C, which allows you to advertise, but you cannot bring in anyone that's non-accredited, meaning if someone doesn't make at least $200,000 a year or have $1 million net worth, they cannot participate or invest in your offering. But if you go the 506B route, you cannot market or solicit. However, you can bring in I think up to 35 non-accredited investors, but it's all going to be like word of mouth, and you have to have a prior existing relationship with those folks. And I've done both of them, and the first one we did was a 506B, where it was all friends and family. The money came in quick, but then right after that, it was like 3 months later, we're like, hey, let's try a 506C. We can go out and market and advertise. But that one was more of a struggle for us. And I think the takeaway is, like, if you're a new syndicator, you don't have that big track record yet, it's hard to go out and attract accredited investors, because these accredited investors, they have all these different options to go invest with all these operators that have been around for a while. They have these track records. And so it's a little bit more challenging to attract the accredited folks. And I believe, like, I mean, if you're looking just like on a national statistics number, like I think there's like 330 million Americans, I would bet that like less than like 1 or 2% are accredited.
Yeah, most definitely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And like, I thought it would have been easier for us. And, you know, maybe this was hubris, ego, I don't know. But it's like, I'm the co-host for the second largest real estate podcast in the United States, right? So it's like I have a pretty broad reach to kind of get in front of people.
Yeah.
And even with that platform, it was still incredibly difficult for us. So it was a bit of a humbling moment to say, okay, we need to kind of recheck and reevaluate what's realistic for us. And that's why we're kind of looking at a different price point as we move forward.
Yeah. So what price points are you guys looking at now?
Ideally, we want the total raise to be like no more than $1 million.
Okay.
Right. And this deal that we're looking at in West Virginia, it's right around that. So that's our goal, at least for this first one, right? And then once we get that first one, there's proof of concept, there's a bit of a track record, then we'll start to scale it up from there.
Well, if you guys ever come across a deal and you're like, hey, we might need a little help with this, and it's a deal that might be aligned with kind of what we're buying right now, be sure to hit us up, man. We might be interested in doing something with you guys.
Same for you, man. If you guys find something and you need some help, we're happy to help take it down. Bro.
Yeah. We're taking down this deal here, 24 units here in Lida, Italy, San Diego. But when we get this thing across the finish line, we're gonna be looking for more stuff. So I'm not sure exactly what direction we're gonna go. You never know where the deals are gonna pop up, but we're sourcing them all over the country right now. We love the coastal stuff.
Yeah, and that's the tricky part about like the hotel space is that if you're an apartment investor, there's a heavy concentration of apartment complexes in most major metros, right? Or even like in, you know, these kind of secondary and tertiary markets, there's multifamily properties everywhere. So you can say, hey, I just want to focus on DFW and I'm only going to buy assets in DFW. In this space, it's a little bit harder to do that because the opportunities, the volume of like assets is significantly lower. So we have to cast a pretty wide net as well to say we're pretty much looking coast to coast, and really it's not the market per se, but more so the characteristics of the property itself.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that, and it's so true. Just the supply of hotels is significantly lower than multifamily or even other asset classes. You're seeing a lot of them, like older motels, be converted to multifamily. I think back in the day, like decades ago, it was a big thing for people to take road trips. And so you see a bunch of like one-off motels in the middle of nowhere on the side of the highway that are like vacant, right? Maybe truckers stay there, I don't know, but like, you know, driving to Vegas, right? You go through Barstow, you see some old rundown motels out there.
Why was that ever even a thing?
Right. But it's like, for me, I'm like, I don't want anything to do with those kind of deals. And so then it cuts down the supply or your options even more. But yeah, it's interesting to see where the boutique hotels go. I was telling you before we started recording today is like, you know, when we were at Bigger Pockets conference, a lot of the people that I met were doing short-term rentals, and every single one of them I spoke to was like, I cannot wait to get into boutique hotels. That's like the next progression for most people. And so I'm curious to see with this big wave of people doing STR right now, that if that's going to trickle down to the boutique hotel space in like a year or two.
I could definitely see that, man. And we're still so early in like the life cycle of short-term rentals, right? It's like if you think about every other major asset class, there's a very strong kind of foundation or structure around supporting that asset class, right? Like if I want to buy multifamily, there are lenders who lend on multifamily all day. They know how to underwrite those deals. They know how to tell you yes or no. In the short-term rental space, it's not quite there yet, right? And the ability to kind of get the same, support that you would get if you were buying an apartment complex aren't there yet. So I do think the next 5 to 10 years is going to be really interesting to see how the support infrastructure starts to build around this short-term rental space.
Yeah. Where do you see the real estate market, and more specifically like the short-term rental market, kind of navigating over the next year or so?
Yeah, I think 2021 was a banner year across the board for almost every single market because there was all of this pent-up demand from COVID. However, 2022, even though slightly lower than 2021, was still better than 2019, which is still better than 2018, which was better than 2017. So all of the data suggests that even if 2022 was down compared to 2021, 2023 should see a bit of a rebound, right? I do feel that that's where we're going. We interviewed the VP of Data and Analytics from AirDNA on the Bigger Pockets podcast not too long ago, and all of the data points that they're looking at also suggest that same thing. So I do think that we'll kind of see this steady increase of demand and revenue as well.
Now, when you say the demand, based on all these years, you're saying like the total market revenue for short-term rentals in whatever X market.
Right.
Now, that's not taking into account the supply of short-term rentals, right? So even though the revenue could be up, the supply of short-term rentals could also be up in that specific market.
Totally.
Meaning, hey, even though the total revenue is up, the revenue per listing could be down, correct?
But we're also seeing that the rate of increase in new listings is slowing down dramatically. So we saw this massive year-over-year uptick in 2021 and like the early half of 2022. But as we got into the back half of 2022 and now 2023, the year-over-year increase in supply is decreasing dramatically. So we saw it was like this where we peaked and now it's starting to come down.
And that's because the rates.
Because the rates, because of fear, because of all these other things. So I do think that we'll start to see a more healthy number of, I guess a healthier increase of supply moving forward.
Yeah.
Learning to become a successful real estate investor can take a lot of time and dedication, which some people just don't have. If you're one of these individuals, this doesn't mean you can't invest in real estate. My company, Summers Capital, is buying a bunch of boutique hotels right now, and you can invest with us in these deals without having to do any of the work. Our team sources the deals, we secure the lending, we take care of all the renovations, and we even handle all the day-to-day operations with our in-house management company, making it truly hands-off and passive for our investors. If you want to learn more to see if we can help you, go to summerscapital.com/invest to book a call with our team. Again, that's summerscapital.com/invest. Now back to the show.
Yeah, it's interesting. What's your take on, like, there's different markets around the country. Some are regulating in terms of like regulations towards short-term rentals. Some are very strict. Some markets are very loose where there's like no regulation at all. And then some are kind of in the middle, you know? What's your strategy there for like any listeners out there that are trying to pick a short-term rental market to go invest in? Which one would you target?
I don't think that regulation is a bad thing.
Agreed.
Every other industry is regulated in some way, shape, or form, right? And for short-term rentals, it was just like the wild, wild west where people were doing whatever they wanted, whenever they wanted. And now that there's this level of regulation coming in, people are like, oh my God, it's over. But no, that we're just normalizing this industry, which is a good thing. I am almost more afraid of markets that have no regulation because it means that there could be almost an infinite amount of supply, right? Because if it's so easy to set up a new unit in that market and the returns are good, it means more investors are going to start coming into that market. For us, our sweet spot is a market that is economically dependent on short-term rentals, but still has high enough regulation to weed out the people that don't want to jump through those hoops, right?
Yeah.
So we invest in Joshua Tree pretty heavily, but the city right next door to Joshua Tree is 29 Palms. A lot of people don't know about 29 Palms. You know, it's like the little brother to Joshua Tree, but there is also an entrance to the national park in 29 Palms, right? So you can go in through Joshua Tree or you can go in through 29.
Sure.
So we bought 3 houses in 29 Palms this last year, and I'm hoping it'll be one of our best investments because the city of 29 Palms instituted a hard cap on the number of short-term rental permits that they'll issue. They're not saying that they're going to ban short-term rentals because they understand that economically they need it, but they are saying that we are going to institute a cap in terms of the number of permits we'll allow at any one given point or time. So what happens as demand for this city starts to increase, but supply is held flat because of this cap? It means that as the host, I can charge more for that same listing.
Absolutely.
Because there's fewer listings that more people are fighting over. So for me, if we can get into markets like that where the regulations are a little bit tougher, or maybe there's a hard cap, and you can be part of those people that got in, that's where you're really going to benefit, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you. I totally agree in the sense that like regulations is not a bad thing. You just figure out a way to legally operate, and it's going to bring more demand to your property. Like San Diego, for example, there was like 16,000 short-term rentals here in the city of San Diego, and the city finally came out and they said, hey, we're going to start regulating. We're going to limit it to 1% of the housing supply. So they're going to issue about 5,500 licenses. So I thought, okay, they're going to go from 16K to 5,500. I thought you have about a 33% chance, a 1/3 chance to get a license. And so what the regs said was like, it's not one per owner, but one per host. So I have 3 short-term rentals here in San Diego, and I said, hey guys, I told the team, I said, we're each going to split up the host and let's all apply and see what happens. And so it turns out we ended up getting 3 licenses, but the city came out and said, hey, we didn't even reach the 5,500 applications. And so the cap was 5,500, but less than that applied out of the 16,000 short-term rentals here. So I'm like, what? It were people sleeping behind the wheel. They didn't know about the permitting process, or they just like, they didn't want to pay the fee. I don't know what it was, but it's kind of crazy. And I see this as an opportunity out there, and I'm going to share it with all the listeners, is they're going to start regulating in May of this year here in San Diego, and the city is still accepting applications. So this is a huge opportunity for someone to come into a great market. Out of all the markets that we have short-term rentals in, like San Diego has been the best. We never have to push and pull on these listings. They just stay booked year round because the weather here, even in December, January, I mean, not today, it's raining. Isn't that a great example? Yeah, this is not a great example. But generally speaking, the weather here is great, right? Sometimes during Christmas, it's 80 degrees and sunny. And so 35 million tourists a year. And then now they're regulating the supply. So there's only gonna be 5,500 in all of San Diego. I mean, this is a big opportunity, and there's not a lot of hotels in San Diego either. And that's why I'm like, hey, we got to buy this hotel here in San Diego. But I thought for the listeners out there, I'm like, this is the opportunity. Go get a deal under contract. As soon as you open escrow, go apply for the license. And you can make some phantom photos, use the MLS listing photos to make this listing. Go apply. And you'll know before you even close escrow if you got the license or not. If you don't, you could just cancel the contract. But if you do, now it gives you certainty and confidence to close on the deal.
And make your purchase agreement contingent upon you getting that license, right? So if you put it in there, say like, hey, I'll give you a super high EMD, I'll close fast, but I need to make sure I get this license. That way, if you don't, you have an easy out as well.
Exactly. And in this market right now, like there's not a ton of, multiple offers happening. Although I know rates are down a little bit right now, and we're starting to see some multiple offer situations, at least from my real estate agent friends here in San Diego. That's what they're telling me. But that said, compared to 2021, when there's like 30 offers on every single piece of property out here, you don't have that competition now. So you can go negotiate a great deal and go get the license before you even close. And you know that thing's going to cash flow great. Huge opportunity.
Dude, I had no idea that there was still room left under that. Because I saw all the news, right? Like, oh, San Diego, 10,000 listings are going to be banned and people aren't even applying. It's so crazy.
So when I heard that, I was like, okay, I got to take advantage of this. So we'll see. But like you said, man, I think regulation is a good thing. Like Nashville is another example, right? I know some people that own short-term rentals in Nashville. There's like pretty strict regulations out there, but the ones that can operate are making a killing.
Crushing it.
And then, when you sell those properties to the next guy, I believe the license is transferable.
That does vary from city to city.
Is it? Okay.
So like in 29 Palms, the current way that the ordinance is set up is that it's non-transferable. So if I have a property that's licensed and I sell it, that person then has to join the waiting list to earn that, or to get that permit back. And I think they're talking about changing it because I think it definitely does hurt property values.
Yeah, it does.
If those don't translate.
For sure.
So I think they understand that. They're trying to rework it.
Yeah. And so I think in Nashville, it does like transfer over, which is like you're seeing people, sell these things to other investors, and those investors are willing to pay a premium because they can legally operate, which is pretty interesting. So you guys are building out the co-hosting business as well. And then you're going to use that same company to manage these boutique hotels as well as you scale that.
Infrastructure.
I love that. What does your co-hosting business look like from a team perspective? Like, what does your team look like?
Yeah, so right now on the operations side, we have me, my wife, and our third business partner that kind of oversee a lot of different things. But under us, we have our operations manager who's based here in the States. So she does pretty much everything about like driving the operations forward. We have 3 virtual assistants that work almost around the clock to actually do the frontline guest communication, and they're sending refunds and requesting money and all of the smaller admin tasks come along with managing the property. We have 2 revenue managers as well that handle all the pricing for us, and that's pretty much it, like in-house. Then we have our cleaning company that kind of works really close with our ops manager, and we have like our maintenance crews in the different markets as well. But like in-house, it's just those folks.
What has been the biggest challenge so far, or bottleneck, if you would, in terms of scaling a co-hosting business?
Not documenting processes earlier. There was a lot of tribal knowledge in terms of how problems got solved. And it was fine when it was just me, my wife, and our business partner, because, you know, we all knew what to do. But as we started to integrate these other people into the team, tribal knowledge doesn't work. So my biggest advice for folks is, even if you just have one listing, start documenting your processes. We use Loom a lot in our business, Loom.
Yep, so good.
Loom's so good, man. It's like you click it on, record a video if you're doing the thing, save that video. Now, anytime anyone on your team has a question about how to do something, instead of you having to explain it to them, you send them the Loom video. So we have tons and tons of Looms in our library about how to do different things in our business.
Yeah. And then now you're managing for third-party owners as well. How are you sourcing those clients?
Yeah, so we've just taken on our first one. That actually came from a relationship, again, someone that I met at one of our meetups that we host. He kind of came up to me afterwards and said, hey, I work for this company, want to do this thing. But how do we plan to kind of scale that business moving forward? We have a lot of relationships with realtors in the markets that we work in, lenders with the markets that we work in, escrow companies in the markets that we work in. So that'll be kind of our first focus. And then obviously using the platform that we've built to kind of market to other owners that maybe like the idea of having a short-term rental but don't want to manage it themselves.
And by the way, I got to make it up to one of your guys' meetups one of these days. It's where is it?
It's in Rancho Cucamonga, so
Rancho?
about an hour and a half north of here.
And where do you guys host it at?
There's my brother-in-law owns a restaurant. They have like really nice outdoor patio, so we do it there.
Okay. We host a meetup down here as well. I love hosting these meetups. I feel like it's just a great time for like, you know, us, the team, to get out there once a month, go shake some hands, meet some new people. There's always new faces that come in, and just chat real estate for a few hours. It's so fun.
And for someone that's just starting out, if you're looking for like an easy way to build your network without getting in front of the camera, doing the podcast thing, hosting your own meetup, I think is one of the most untapped tools that people have to kind of build a name for themselves. I encourage everyone in my coaching programs to start a meetup. We have a few that have started doing it, and the results you get are so crazy, man. It's like you never know who you're going to meet, but if you're the person that's at the front every single month after month, eventually you're going to meet someone that you can provide value to, and then they can provide value in return.
When did you start your meetup? And then maybe talk about like, what was like the first couple like, and then how many people do you have come out today?
I mean, we started our meetup like after we'd already kind of built a following. So
Sure.
we started last summer.
Okay.
And I think like from the jump, we had like 150 people that showed up. So
Big number.
Yeah. So ours has been pretty like larger than most meetups from the beginning. But it's a really lax environment. Like we don't have speakers that come on stage or anything. It's just like, yeah, we're going to network. We'll do like a little like elevator pitch type thing, and that's pretty much it. So it's free flowing.
I love that. That's kind of how ours is. It's like, you know, you go to these other meetups and they have these structured speakers and everyone sits down. But I have always thought the true power of going to a meetup, and I also believe like going to a conference even, is not necessarily listening to a speaker, but it's like the connections and the people that you shake hands with, because you never know what those relationships are going to lead to. And so ours is really just based on, there's no pitching, there's no speaking. We just go out. We have a rooftop location here in San Diego, and we just chat it up. It's called Beers and Deals. We just have some drinks, chat real estate, and just networking, you know, for 3 hours. And people love it because of that. The feedback is like, hey, we love that you guys don't have these formal speakers.
Right. My life literally changed because of a meetup. The guy that I told you about earlier that said, hey, Tony, you should come buy this cabin in Tennessee.
Yeah.
I met him at a meetup about a year before. And it's like, had I not gone there, maybe I'm not even sitting in this seat talking to you right now. Right? But that one relationship changed my life.
That is crazy, man. So that first deal in Sevierville, your guys' is like investment strategy, generally speaking, all these deals that you guys have in Joshua Tree and now 29 Palms, are you guys buying solely fixers, doing full renovations? Like, what is the investment strategy there?
We have a few different models, right,
Okay.
that we follow. A big part of our growth, again, comes down to relationships. So all of those tiny homes, again, we have like 12 or 13 in Joshua Tree. All of them came from one person. So he listed one of his tiny homes like 2.5 years ago. We saw it, we loved it, we bought it from him. During escrow, we said, look, if you have more of these, we'll buy them from you. And he was like, I've got a lot more of these coming up. He had like multiple lots all around the country or all around the city he was buying on. We ended up buying all of them off market from him. And it was a win-win situation because he didn't have to list it. He didn't have to worry about a buyer's agent. It was a win-win for us because he was giving us a discount to what it appraised for. So if it appraised for, and these are tiny homes, right? If it appraised for 340, maybe we're buying it for 325, right? So it was a win-win, a win-win situation for both of us. So we bought a lot of new construction from him. And then if we're not buying new construction from him, that's when we're going in, finding the properties we need to rehab, getting the rehab done, and then turn them into short-term rentals.
Is it challenging to get lending for a tiny home?
No, because as long as you meet certain square footage requirements and that it's on a fixed foundation, they'll treat it just like a normal structure. And what's cool now is that because we own so many, typically when we go to buy a new one, they're appraising it against the one that we already own. So we typically know what it's going to appraise for. But as long as it's on a fixed foundation, I think it's more than like 300 square feet, you should be good.
What kind of like LTV do you typically get on a tiny home?
It depends on the kind of debt. Usually right now we're doing about 15% down. So, what is that, 85% LTV. A lot of them are at 10% earlier on. Right now, usually somewhere between 15 to 20% down.
That's not bad. And these are like DSCR loans?
It varies, man. We have some that are like second home vacation loans. We did a few of those to kind of get going. Some are just like investor loans where it's almost like a DSCR, but not really because they're not underwriting it based on the short-term rental income. More so like, I don't even really know what they're using to underwrite it. We've looked at some DSCR like short-term rental specific options, but for one reason or another, those loans didn't work out. And the markets that we're in, their appraisals can come back short if it's not someone that really knows that market.
Yeah.
And a lot of these short-term rental DSCR companies are national and they're just like farming these appraisals out. So we've had 2 deals where we tried to do that and then the appraisal came back super low and we went with one of our go-to lenders and they were able to make it work.
Yeah. In terms of like like you guys are buying these new constructions out in Joshua Tree, which is like out in the desert.
No.
Are these on septic tanks?
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah, and that was I'm from the city, like the suburbs, right? Like
Sure.
I didn't even know what a septic tank was.
Yeah.
And the first property that we bought out there, we had septic issues, and we got like a crash course in managing a septic tank from that.
Yeah. I got one property, I think, to date that has septic. It's not on city sewer, and it's that luxury home out in Scottsdale. So that was kind of my first experience kind of learning about how does the septic work,
Dude,
that sort of
we
thing.
learned about septic issues the worst way possible. So we had a guest that was staying at that property.
Oh, no.
And they went to go take a shower, and when they turned the water on to start the shower, sewage was coming up out of the drain.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like the sewage that you were supposed to flush down was coming back up. So we know, now usually for rehabbing a property, we'll do a septic inspection, and if it's like too old or whatever, we'll just replace it just from the jump.
Yeah. Yeah, I always tell people I love buying stuff that we can renovate and fix up and kind of add our value that way. But if you're not going to do that, I always love doing what you guys are doing, buying new construction, because just the repair, maintenance, expenses, generally speaking, are going to be significantly lower on these new construction properties because everything's brand new for the most part.
And honestly, you have to make that decision based on the market, right? Because what we're seeing is that even if I buy an older 3-bedroom and I renovate it to the 9s, it still might not be able to compete with a brand new construction 3-bedroom because the architectural styles will be different, right? A lot of the existing homes in Joshua Tree, they've got like 9-foot ceilings, right? Whereas now the new construction fields, they've got like 15-foot ceilings, right? And from a guest, like that aesthetic is so much nicer. So even if we go out and we do everything super nice, like the actual physical construction of the building can make a big difference. So I think you have to know your market well enough to say, can I just go out and renovate a home, or do I actually have to go out and get new construction or build it myself?
How much are you guys dropping on a typical design in to furnish a short-term rental?
So if we're doing like a full rehab right now on a 3-bed, we're probably spending about $125, and that's like everything, like the full rehab, furnishings, like forks, knives, everything.
What about just for the design and furnishing? No rehab, no improvements, just design and furnishings.
We've never done it where we're just doing the design for like a larger property, but I can like for our smaller. I'll tell you this, right? On the furnishings and stuff, it's probably about like 15 grand if we're just doing like the furnishings for like a 3-bedroom.
Okay, that's pretty light.
Yeah, it's
that's
not too bad.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
What's the most you guys have ever spent on like furnishing design?
I wish I could tell you, but my wife is one that does all the design
Okay.
work, so I couldn't even tell you what it is.
Yeah, I feel like they can be all over the place. I think we've done some like that are lower, like some of our 4 bedrooms we've done like for like 30, 35. But like the Scottsdale property, I think we dropped like 140 on that thing.
Just on the furniture?
Furniture and interior design.
No way.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
But I mean, we're going all out. You know, we're
Yeah.
putting all of the little stuff in there.
Is that
But
the one that has the speakeasy?
it is.
Yeah, see, I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that one's like pretty wild, right? So
It is.
What's the square footage on that property?
That one's 7,600 square feet.
See, that's massive, right?
Yeah.
Like most of our properties in JT that we're doing the rehabs, they're like 1,100 square feet.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Hey guys, real quick, I hope that you're finding value in this show. If you could do me a huge favor and drop a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or whichever platform you're listening on, it would mean the world to me. Also, if you know of anyone that would potentially benefit from this podcast, feel free to share it with them so we can help more people build wealth through real estate investing. Now back to the show. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting to see like where the market navigates, especially with all these STRs. But I love that you said you interviewed the AirDNA guy, and he's telling you, hey, like they're seeing a big decrease in pullback in terms of new short-term rental listings that are coming to the market, and it kind of makes sense. I mean, I think for someone that's new right now trying to get into STR and the interest rates are up, which makes these deals a little bit more challenging to pencil.
Totally.
They're not going to go into a saturated market at least, right? What are a couple markets you like right now for STR for any of the listeners out there that maybe want to go buy their first short-term rental?
Yeah. Here's the first thing I'll say,
Yeah.
right? I think so many people want like the list to say, go to this city, this city, this city, this city. I think it is a somewhat personal decision in terms of what market you invest in. And the things that I tell people are, when you're looking at a new market, there's 3 boxes you need to check. And as long as you check those 3 boxes, it really doesn't matter where you go.
What are the 3 boxes?
Policies, can you rent it legally in that city, right? Do you understand what the policy process is? Popularity, are people actually going there? Is there demand for that city? And then profitability, can you reach your own return metrics by going into that market? So if you check those 3 boxes, it doesn't matter where you go. So we just had our event in Orlando, and during that event, I talked about market selection. And what I did live, I said, I'm gonna drop a pin on a map, and wherever that pin drops, I'm gonna see if that's a good market for me to invest in. And the pin dropped in Kansas. I'd never even thought about Kansas as a market before, and I went through the steps that I would take of, okay, is Kansas a good deal? We looked at regulations. We figured out what those were. Check. We looked at how many people were coming into that market. Are there draws bringing people in? Check. And the last piece was, if we analyze a few deals, does it meet our return requirements? Check. So cool. I would invest in Kansas if the deals made sense there. So follow that framework. I think you can apply it to anywhere. But to answer your question, where are we looking at, right? So we are obviously in Josh Tree in Tennessee. I think that those markets are heating up a little bit, especially Tennessee. It's significantly harder to find a good deal just like on market in the Smoky Mountains right now.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that because a while back we were looking at some stuff out there in the Smokies, and I always look at like the year over year like median home price in whatever market that we're looking in. And when I looked into like Gatlinburg at that time, this is like a year ago, the year over year increase was like almost 100%,
right? It almost doubled.
almost 100% in 1 year, which is nuts. And that's probably because of short-term rentals, right?
Absolutely. Like that first cabin we bought, $590 is what we paid for it. If we sold it today, it's probably $1 million, right? And has revenue doubled in that same time frame? Absolutely not, right? Revenue is actually, again, 2021 we did 156 in top line revenue. 2022 we were like 135. So revenue went down almost 20 grand, but prices have doubled, right? So Tennessee's a little tough. Josh Tree, there's still opportunity there. I think there's still a lot of opportunity in Josh Tree, but we're looking in West Virginia. There's parts of West Virginia that we're looking at. Carolina's actually we're really heavy in right now.
Where in the Carolinas?
So like Beach Mountain, Boone Mountain area, not too far from like Asheville. We're looking in New York actually. So there's a area of New York called the Finger Lakes, and we were out there last summer. Really like that area as well. And then Branson, Missouri. We like Branson a lot as well.
You get some cheap real estate out there in Branson.
Dude, it's super similar to what you see in Tennessee in terms of amenities and the style of construction and just like the traveler demographic, but the prices are not nearly as high as what you'll see in Tennessee. So that's why we like Branson.
Yeah. And then how do you determine, like once you select your market, how do you determine what kind of property you should buy? Like how do you know which property is going to do the best?
It's a great question. And honestly, it comes down to the analysis. So when we were initially looking in Tennessee, this was back in 2020, what we saw when we looked at a few of those deals was that the sweet spot in that market was the 4 and 5 bedroom, because the price difference between a 3 and a 5 was relatively small, but the revenue difference between a 3 and a 5 was relatively big.
Massive.
Right? If you're buying maybe like a 2-bed or a 3-bed, maybe you're going to do $100,000. You're buying a 5-bed, you do 156, right? So it was a big difference in revenue, but the price was relatively small. So we were able to maximize our returns by buying 4 and 5 bedrooms in that market. In Joshua Tree, we're starting to see almost the inverse, where sometimes the smaller properties will give you a better cash on cash return. Like our tiny homes, from a cash on cash return perspective, outperform our bigger properties. Bigger properties will do more revenue, right? So if you want top line revenue, go with the bigger properties. But if you want to maximize your cash on cash, the smaller properties tend to do well. So I think the way you do that is you analyze each bedroom size, do a few deals, and you'll start to see where that kind of sweet spot is.
What would you say your biggest or your best investment to date is?
That first cabin, by far.
In Sevierville.
By far. Right?
That's ironic though. It's like your first short-term rental was the best one.
It was the best one.
Yeah.
And it was a timing thing. It was a pricing thing. I think the interest rate on that deal is like 3.25, right? So it was all these things that really made that deal do well. But even today, man, like we still have deals that we bought, like at the tail end of, like where 2022 was their first year, and we're still getting 60% cash on cash returns, right? So even in this climate, we're still finding deals that make sense.
Even with these high interest rates.
Even, right? Yeah. I'd say the volume of deals has slowed down tremendously, right? Like we were buying almost a property like every almost 4 weeks last year, right? Whereas now that volume of deals has slowed down. So the deals are still out there, but the quantity is definitely smaller. You got to take a little bit more time.
Have you sold any of your deals?
We sold one.
Why? Which one was that?
It was actually that first one that had the septic tank issues in Joshua Tree. But we sold that, and then we 1031 into 2 cabins in Tennessee. So we were able, we sold at the right time, had a decent amount of equity, and now the revenue that one property in JT would have done, we're getting like double that with the 2 cabins in Tennessee.
How many are you guys managing right now?
So out of our 30 that we have, only one of those are co-hosted. Okay. Everything else is just us.
So you own 29 of them.
Yeah. We have partners on all of those deals. So like we have 5 that we own by ourselves, and then the other 20, whatever that is, we have partners on those deals, and then one we have is co-hosted.
How do you structure the partners then?
It varies, right? So we have some deals where we charge a management fee and maybe we retain a little bit of equity. We have some where we just split it down the middle, 50-50. We have some where maybe it's a 60-40 split. So it varies, right? It varies on the deal and the kind of returns you want to give back to that partner. But I'd say the vast majority of what we have is just a 50-50 split. So they typically bring the capital. We find the deal, we set the property up, we manage it, we do all the hard work with it, and we split it down the middle.
And most of your partners that are bringing the capital, are they also sourcing the lending or securing the lending?
So usually we have such a good relationship with our lender. We say, hey, because it's usually off-market deal flow, right? So we say, hey, no one else is going to give you this deal except for us. So if you want this deal, you got to work with our guy, because it makes the transaction so much easier.
Yeah, because like you alluded to, that second home mortgage for 10% down, now rates are kind of expensive, but most people can only use one of those to their disposal. Right. And so if you're an active real estate investor, you've already used yours. Right. I think having a partner that can qualify for that, I would be like all over that. I'd be jumping on it, right?
And it's a great way to scale. I mean, you want to do your best to make sure you're still checking the boxes, right? Like you got to make sure that person doesn't live too close to the property. You have to make sure that they actually use themselves for some portion of the year. But if you can check those boxes, it was a really great way to get relatively inexpensive debt for a property that was going to cash flow really well. Yeah,
I love that. So, dude, you're involved with so many different things right now. You got the coaching business now. You guys are doing live events. You got the co-hosting business. You guys are going after commercial deals. I've always been curious, like, what is your why? Like, what gets you out of bed every morning?
Oh, man. I shared this at my event last week, and if it's okay, I'll tell you a story.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Like I said, I became a dad when I was 16, right? And 2 things happened when I became a dad, right? First, there's this realization that you have this other human that is now depending on you for their livelihood, and at some point, you got to put a roof over their head, food on the table, clothes on their backs, right? So at a very early age, the idea that I needed to be a provider was very ingrained in kind of who I was. The second thing that happened was that my son's mom and I, we were never together after he was born. And we couldn't really agree on how much time he should spend at her house versus my house. So anyway, we ended up going to like this lengthy court battle over, what custody was going to look like. Luckily, we were able to work things out. So we share custody his whole life, like 50-50 down the middle. But going to court with someone kind of puts a strain on that relationship, right? So those two things I was kind of struggling with is when I became a dad initially, right? This pressure of providing plus this kind of strained relationship with his mom. But whatever, I'm doing my thing. I go to college and I said, what is the one career I can be that will give me like a super steady career income? And I was like, cool, I want to be an engineer, right? I was good at math. And I heard that engineers made $60K a year when they graduated. I was working for like $6.25 an hour at Foot Locker at the time. So $60K, I was like, let's do it, right? So dude, I go to college, I'm crushing it. And I ended up getting an internship from Chevron. And at the time, Rich, it was one of the highest paying internships in the country. And I was like, man, this is great. Like I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. And I ended up interning for Chevron for 2 summers. And after that second summer, 2 things happened. First, Chevron came to me. They're like, Tony, we love you so much. You've done a phenomenal job. We know you're not done with school yet, but we want to offer you a job. So as soon as you finish college, you don't have to interview. You don't have to jump through the hoops. As soon as you graduate, just come here. You can start working.
Sure.
I'm like, fantastic, right? The second thing that happens is I realized I hated engineering. I was like, I cannot do this for the rest of my life. Everyone that I'd met that was there, they had been there for like 30 years. None of them were super passionate about it. Like it was just a job to them. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this for the rest of my life. So made the tough decision to leave Chevron. And that first summer where I wasn't working that internship, like, dude, I was like balling out when I was working at that internship. It's like more money I'd ever made. And I would like stack up my money throughout the summer and I'd use that to live off of during the school year. So that first summer when I didn't have the internship, I was dead broke. Like account overdrawn broke, right? And that was also the first summer that my son started preschool. And do you have kids, Rich?
I don't.
So I've heard this from a lot of parents. When your kid goes to school for the first time, they end up getting sick. It's their first time being around a bunch of other kids, and they're snotty, they're German, they're all over each other, whatever. So it happens to my son. He ends up getting sick, and he was with me that week. And I'm doing all the stuff you're supposed to do at home. He's not getting better. I'm like freaking out. I got to get you to the doctors. So it's the middle of summer in Southern California, like triple-digit heat outside. We jump in the car, race into urgent care. My air conditioner is broken and I'm too broke to fix it. So I got like all the windows down. I'm sweating balls trying to get to the urgent care. I'm pulling over like every few minutes because my son's like, Dad, I got to throw up and all this other stuff. So whatever, we finally make it to urgent care. It's a mess getting there, but we finally get there, right? And I grab my son out the car. I rush inside. I'm like, hey, my son's been super sick. Like, can you guys get him seen? They're like, sir, don't worry. Like, you're at the right place. We're going to get him taken care of. So they get all his info, birthday, whatever. And they're like, so, sir, doctor's ready to see him, but one last thing. It's a $15 copay for your son to get seen today. Now, I was literally in the negative when I showed up there. And I told the receptionist, like, look, is there any way you can bill me afterwards? Like, can we just get him seen now? You bill me later. She's like, sir, I'm sorry. Like, company policy, you got to pay that $15 first. And at this point, I'm like desperate. I'm like, and I just reasoned with him, like, look, I literally have no money to my name. And I'm really worried for my son. Can you do anything to help me? And Rich, like, I'll never forget the way she looked at me. It was like this mix of like uneasiness and sadness. And she's like, sir, I'm so incredibly sorry, but the only way your son is going to be seen today is if you pay that $15. All right, we're talking about $15, 60 quarters.
Yeah.
I didn't have 60 quarters to my name.
What did you do?
I had to call my son's mom, who I was, kind of beefing with, and her husband showed up and they paid the $15. And dude, talk about humbling, right? To have to call someone that you're not on the best of terms with to come bail you out. And I felt defeated, I felt frustrated, I felt angry, all these negative emotions. And most of all, I kind of felt like I had failed as a parent. And when I think about what my why is, it's that moment, right? Because no matter how big the platform that I have or how many short-term rentals or how big the property is, somewhere deep down inside there's still that 20-year-old kid that didn't have 60 quarters to his name. So I have this like unrelenting fear about ever being back in that same position again. And that's what kind of gets me up and drives me every day.
Damn, that's a powerful why, man, and a hell of a story there. That's definitely humbling. And then, I think even more importantly, like now your son gets to kind of see you grow and build your portfolio and now help others and give back. And that's probably inspiring him in a whole different light that, maybe you didn't even think of.
Yeah, it's been crazy, man. It was a few months ago, he plays basketball and someone's like, his name's Sean. Sean, if you don't become a basketball player, what do you want to do? It's like, I think I might want to be a real estate investor. And that was the first time I'd ever heard him say that before. So that was kind of cool.
Dude, like you, man, I went through the same thing. I mean, I was, W-2 employee, and I didn't make this switch over to real estate investing until I had worked a government job for 11 years as an air traffic controller, and I was in my young 30s. And, society always tells us like, hey, like, that's your thing. That's probably a little bit late for a lot of people to just make a completely like big pivot and walk away from a government job like that. But looking back, man, it's changed my life, and it's changed your life as well. Just the power of real estate and the power of like just going after your dreams, and like it's just like little action every single day, but consistent action. It goes such a long way, man. It's great. It's so powerful.
I appreciate that, brother.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, hey, listen, man, it's been a pleasure. I appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Dude, I appreciate you having me on, and I hope the listeners got some value from it. If you guys want to connect with me afterwards, it's Tony J. Robinson on Instagram. And it's Tony Robinson, not Tony Robbins. I don't want people to
People
follow
always
me.
screw that up.
They're going to be super disappointed. So Tony J. Robinson. And I'm, like I said, I'm the co-host of the Bigger Pockets Real Estate Rookie podcast. So you guys can catch me over there. And if you're on YouTube, we're the Real Estate Robinsons on YouTube.
Yeah, listeners, go shoot Tony and his wife, Sarah, a follow. And we'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.